Babaji and the 18th SIDDHA KRIYA Yoga tradition. 10th chapter. The Supramental evolution. Sri Aurobindo and the 18th SIDDHAs. One of the few persons in modern times who could fully appreciate the greatness of a divine transformation of humanity was Sri Aurobindo. While most of the Pandits and orthodox religious leaders of India have regarded the writings of the Siddhas with their claims of physical immortality as a product of imagination, Sri Aurobindo attempted for 40 years to realize such a state. While he never claimed to be a part of the 18th Siddha tradition, as will be seen below, it is evident that the transformative experiences of Tirumular Ramalinga Aurobindo and the mother Aurobindo's chief disciple were all of the same nature. His contemporary accounts may therefore help one to appreciate the claims of the Siddhas. Sri Aurobindo inspired vision was expressed in the life divine and the synthesis of yoga, and his experiences in self transformation were expressed in his letters on yoga and the epic poem Savitri. Aurobindo 1935 9a 1935b 1969 1950a. The latter two works in particular describe in detail the many stages and difficulties involved in such a transformation. Far from being an end in itself, physical immortality represented to Aurobindo the next stage in humanity's evolution. It was to be the result of spiritual transformation, the culmination of a process in which a divine supramental consciousness would descend into the lower planes of consciousness, even in inconscient levels of matter. Aurobindo's descriptions of this transformative process and its results are strikingly similar to those of both the 18 Siddhas and Ramalinga described in earlier chapters, particularly in the references to the golden dust and golden body. His deep love for humanity and his orientation towards the physical world and action are also similar to those of the Siddhas. The commonality of experience and orientation may provide us with some guidelines for our own discipline and lifestyles to be explored in the next chapter. Aurobindo Ghosh was born in Calcutta on August 15, 1872. He studied in England from the age of 5 to the age of 20. Returning to India in 1892, Aurobindo worked as a teacher of French and English and later as the private secretary of the Prince of Baroda. He married in 1901. However, in the intervening years, most of his energies were taken up by the fledgling Indian independence movement, for which he had become one of its principal leaders. He was charged by the British with subversion and jailed, but acquitted after a trial for lack of evidence. Sapterm 1975, page number 27, from 149 to 150. Meeting with Yogi Lily. In the midst of all these political activities, on December 30th, 1907, Aurobindo met a yogi named Vishnu Bhaskar Lily. It was the first time he had met a yogi intentionally. He said to Lily, "I want to do yoga, but for work, for action, not for sannyasa, renouncing the world and nirvana." Aurobindo, 1972, page number 349. The two men spent 3 days together in a single room. Lily told him to sit in meditation. But do not think, look only at your mind. You will see thoughts coming into it. Before they can enter, throw these away from your mind till your mind is capable of entire silence. Aurobindo, 1972, page number 132. He later recorded, the first result was a series of tremendously powerful experiences and radical changes of consciousness, which I had never intended and which were quite contrary to my own ideas, for they made me see with a stupendous intensity the world as a cinematographic play of vacant forms in the impersonal university of the absolute Brahma. Aurobindo 1972, page number 127. In the enormous spaces of the self, the body now seemed only a wandering shell. Aurobindo 1972, page number 132. It threw me suddenly into a condition above and without thought, unstained by any mental or vital movement. There was no ego, no real world, only when one looked through the immobile senses. Something perceived or borne upon its sheer silence, a world of empty forms, materialized shadows without true substance. There was no one or many, even only just absolutely that futureless, relationless, sheer, indescribable, unthinkable, absolute, yet supremely real and solely real. This was no mental realization or something glimpsed somewhere above, no abstraction. It was positive, the only positive reality, although not a spatial physical world, pervading, occupying, or rather flooding and drawing this semblance of a physical world, leaving no room or space for any reality, but itself allowing nothing else to seem at all actual, positive, or substantial. What this experience brought was an inexpressible peace, a stupendous silence, an infinity of release and freedom. Aurobindo 1972, page number 132. Aurobindo had entered into the state of Nirvikalpa Samadhi, or that of the Vedanta and Hindu sacred literature, or what the Buddhists refer to as Nirvana, liberation, the final goal of mystical traditions around the world, which so few ever attain, even after years of arduous effort. But this end point was to be just the beginning of much higher experiences. He records, I lived in the nirvana day and night before it began to admit other things into itself or modify itself at all. In the end, it began to disappear into a greater subconsciousness from above. The aspect of an illusionary world gave place to one in which illusion in only a small surface phenomenon with an immense divine reality behind it and a supreme divine reality above it, and an instance divine reality in the heart of everything that had seemed at first only a cinematic shape or shadow, and this was no imprisonment in the senses, no diminution or fall from supreme experience. It came rather as a constant heightening and widening of the truth. Nirvana in my liberated consciousness turned out to be the beginning of my realization, a first step towards the complete thing, not the sole true attainment possible or even a culminating finale. Aurobindo 1972, page number 154. Nirvana cannot be at once the ending of the path with nothing beyond to explore. It is the end of the lower path through the lower nature and the beginning of the higher evolution. Aurobindo 1969, A, page number 71. Aurobindo continued in this state while editing his daily newspaper, organizing clandestine meetings and addressing political rallies, Before the first such rally, when he expressed to Lily his hesitation to speak, Lily asked me, pray. But I was so absorbed in the silent Brahman consciousness that I could not pray. He replied that it did not matter. He and some others would pray, and I had simply to go to the meeting and make namaskar, bow to the audience as Narayan, the Lord, and wait, and speech would come to me from some other source than the mind. Purani, 1958, page number 120. Aurobindo followed these instructions, and the speech came as through it were dictated. And ever since, all speech, writing, thought, and outward activity have so come to me from the same source above the brain mind. Aurobindo, 1972, page number 83. This was his first experience with the superconscient. His speech was wonderful. Try to realize the strength within you. Try to bring it forward so that everything you do may be not your own doing, but the doing of that truth within you. Because it is not you, it is something within you. What can all these tribunals, what can all the powers of the world to do that which is within you, that immortal, that unborn and undying one, whom the sword cannot pierce, whom the fire cannot burn, him the jail cannot confine, and the gallows cannot end? What is there that you can fear when you are conscious of him? Who is within you? Aurobindo, 1922, page number 22. Aurobindo was arrested by the British police a second time at dawn on May 4, 1908. It was during the daily exercise period in the yard of the Alipore jail that a series of spiritual experiences brought about a change in his consciousness. He began to see the Lord in everyone. In the iron case in the courtroom during the trial, which lasted 6 months, the same vision followed him. I looked at the prosecuting counsel, and it was not the counsel of the prosecution that I saw. It was Sri Krishna who sat there and smiled. Now, do you fear? He said, I am in all men and overrule their actions and their words. Aurobindo, 1922, page number 58. In the quest of the secret, after his release from the Alipore jail, Aurobindo took up his revolutionary work again. Through his experiences in the Alipore jail, he had attained an overmind consciousness, where in the separate truths of existence, such as peace, love, beauty, power, knowledge, will, etc., are experienced fully but independent of one another. But the limitations of this consciousness were clearly seen too. In it, one experiences but one truth at a time. It sees all but sees all from its own viewpoint. Aurobindo, 1958, page number 128. By its very structure, the overmind consciousness must divide the unit, and the more it descends into the lower mental planes, the more it becomes fragmented. What was needed then was a truth of the body and the earth, not just a truth of the spirit and heavens. Another power was needed, one which could resist the downward divisive power to which human nature was subject. Aurobindo began to search for the key to a true life down here. Life not remote, silent, or high uplifted, ecstatic beyond life alone, is the field of our yoga. Aurobindo, 1976, page number 101. Aurobindo said, it is clear that mind has not been able to change human nature radically. You can go on changing human institutions infinitely, and yet the imperfections will break through all your institutions. It must be another power that can not only resist but overcome the downward pull. Supreme 1975, page number 228. Aurobindo referred to this hidden power as the secret, the supramental consciousness. In February 1910, less than 1 year after his release from jail, he was warned that he was about to be arrested again and deported to the Andaman Islands. The voice spoke to him, "Go to Chandarnagaro." He left 10 minutes later on a boat down the Ganges. At Chandarnagaro in 1910, he found the secret for which he had been searching. The circumstances surrounding its discovery were never related by him. However, from his later writings, it is apparent that to reach it, he had to go through a living hell, because one could not ascend higher than one has descended. On each height we conquer, we have to turn to bring down its power and its illumination into the lower mortal moment. For if the divinity is to descend into us, transforming our human nature, its progress will consist not so much in our raising up as in our pouring out all the holds us back, all that obscures, cleaning of the subconscient with all its fears, desires, pain, and distortions becomes of primary importance. At the lowest level of human consciousness lies the subconscient, which is the result of the evolution of life in matter. It contains all of the habits of life, including those of disease and death. At Chandarnagare, Sri Aurobindo reached the final depths of the physical subconscient. As he said, "No, it is not with the Emperorina heavenly that I am busy. I wish it were. It is rather with the opposite end of things." Aurobindo 1972, page number 222. At the same time, he reached the upper frontier of the overmind, where the great colored waves merge with the white light. Aurobindo touched correspondingly the black rock down below. "I have been digging deep and long, mid a horror of filth and mire," a voice cried. "Go where none have gone. Dig deeper, deeper yet, till thou reach the grim foundation stone and knock at the keyless gate." Aurobindo 1946, page number 6-8. He found himself at the bottom of the pit of the inconscient matter when, without dissolution, he broke into another space and time. Supreme 1975, page number 259. A fathomless sealed astonishment of light. Aurobindo 1952a, page number 40. A grand reversal of the night and day. All the world's values changed. Aurobindo 1950a, page number 49. The high meets the low, all in a single plan. Aurobindo 1950a, page number 615. He broke through to the supramental, which is the very basis of all matter, experiencing an illumination in the very cells of the body. The secret of the transformation was this: the consciousness above is the consciousness below. They must enter into the last finite if they want to reach the last infinite. Aurobindo 1969, page number 393. Heaven in its rapture dreams of perfect earth, earth in its sorrow dreams of perfect heaven. They are kept from their oneness by enchantment fears. Aurobindo 1950a, page number 768. The Golden Supramental, The descriptions of the supramental and are reminiscent of similar descriptions by the 18 Siddhas of Shorba Samadhi and the Golden Samadhi and by Ramalinga with the Golden Body. Aurobindo's chief disciple, the mother, after her first experience of it, wrote, "There was this impression of power, of warmth, of gold. It was not fluid, it was like a glow of dust. And each one of these things, they cannot be called particles, nor fragments, not even points, unless one takes point in the mathematical sense, a point which does not take up space. It was like vivid gold, a warm gold dust. One cannot say it was brilliant, one cannot say it was dark, nor was it made of light as we understand it, a crowd of tiny little points of gold, nothing but that. I would have said that they touched my eyes, my face, and with a formidable power. At the same time, a feeling of plenitude, the peace of all power. It was rich, it was full, it was movement at its fastest, infinitely more rapid than anything one can imagine, and at the same time, it was absolute peace, perfect tranquility. It gives a feeling of a perfect immobility. It is absolutely indescribable, but it is this which is the origin and the support of the whole terrestrial evolution. And I have noticed that in that state of consciousness, the movement exceeds the force or the power which concentrates the cells to make of them an individual form. Supra 1975, page number 280-81. This description is also reminiscent of that most pregnant of the phases at the Siddhas. Be still and know that I am God. For immobility was the basis of the supramental power. Pondicherry. After 2 months in Chandarnagaro, Aurobindo heard the voice again asking him to go to Pondicherry. Shortly thereafter, he left secretly by ship, narrowly escaping the British police. Pondicherry was a French colony on the southeastern coast of India. It was during that period a very quiet, seemingly dead backwater. It was the last place one would expect a spiritual revolution to begin. However, it had a fitting past. A French professor there, Joël Dubreuil, discovered that centuries ago it has been called Vedpuri, being a center of Vedic studies in the south, and that by tradition the Siddha Agastya was its guardian. He discovered that the once Vedic university was situated in the exact spot where Sri Aurobindo ultimately located his permanent residence. The current Tamil name Puducherry New Town went back several centuries and had been referred to as Poduka by the Greek Ptolemy in the 2nd century AD and by earlier writers. Iyengar 1972, page number 676. Aurobindo had a difficult time during his first years in Pondicherry. A few of his revolutionary followers came and stayed with him, waiting for him to resume his activities in that field, but Aurobindo had other matters to attend to. When urged one day to resume his political struggle, he quickly replied that what was needed was not a revolt against the British government, which anyone could easily manage, but a revolt against the whole of universal nature. Purani 1959, page number 45. Aurobindo read the Vedas, the ancient sacred writings in their original form for the first time during the first few years in Pondicherry. He recognized in them experiences which he had had himself and translated parts of them in light of his experience. But unlike the writers of the Vedas, the ancient rishis, it was not personal self realization that Aurobindo sought. In 1910, Paul Richard, a French writer, came to Pondicherry. He came a second time in 1914 expressly to see Aurobindo and then proposed that they both start a bilingual monthly philosophical journal, the Arya, or Review of the Grand Synthesis. From 1914 to 1920, Aurobindo published this journal as well as most of his written work, nearly 5,000 pages, writing several books at a time. These included The Life Divine, which gave his fundamental philosophical vision for man's evolution, The Synthesis of Yoga, which describes his integral yoga and contrasts it to other yogic disciplines, Essays on the Gita, which interprets the Bhagavad Gita in the light of Aurobindo's vision of the descent of the supramental consciousness. The secret of the Veda, the ideal of human unity, and the human cycle, the last three described future possibilities of human societies. The ideas in these works came in a torrent of inspiration without effort. According to Aurobindo, I have made no endeavor in writing. I have simply left the higher power to work, and when it did not work, I made no effort at all. It was in the old intellectual days that I had sometimes tried to force things, and not after I started development of poetry and prose by yoga. Let me remind you also that when I was writing the Arya, and also whenever I write these letters or replies, I never think. It is out of a silent mind that I write whatever comes ready, shaped from above. Roy, 1952, page number 247. In 1920, he laid down his pen. The final edition of the Arya was published during the next 30 years. His writing was limited to an enormous amount of correspondence and to the writing of the epic poem, Savitri, of 23,813 lines, which summarizes most vividly his vision of humanity evolution, his labors with the subconscient and inconscient, as well as his experiences with the higher realm of consciousness. Supreme, 1975, page number 294. The crisis of transformation. Aurobindo saw humanity at a crossroads in its evolution. If a spiritual unfolding on earth is the hidden truth of our birth into matter, if it is fundamentally an evolution of consciousness that has been taking place in nature, then man, as he is, cannot be the last term of that evolution. He is too imperfect, an expression of the spirit mind itself, a too limited form and instrumentation. Mind is only a middle term of consciousness. The mental being can only be a transitional being. If then man is incapable of exceeding mentality, he must be surpassed, and supermind and superman must manifest and take the lead of the creation. But if his mind is capable of opening to what exceeds it, then there is no reason why man himself should not arrive at supermind and supermanhood, or at least lend his mentality, life, and body to an evolution of that greater term of the spirit manifesting in nature. Aurobindo, 1935, a page number 109. We have reached, according to Aurobindo, a crisis of transformation. Aurobindo, 1949, page number 292, which is a crucial, as must have been the crisis which marked the appearance of life in matter, or the crisis which marked the appearance of mind in life. Supreme, 1975, page number 308. Unlike the earlier crisis, however, mankind can be the conscious collaborators of our own evolution. Supreme 1975, page number 308. For Aurobindo, however, it was not to be our human forces which would bring about the transformation, but an increasingly consciousness surrender to the divine force above. The limitations of the human mind, vital and physical nature were too great. With regards to the physical body, Aurobindo said, in the spiritual tradition, the body has been regarded as an obstacle, incapable of spiritualization or transmutation, and a heavy weight holding the soul to earthly nature and preventing its ascent either to spiritual fulfillment in the Supreme or to the dissolution of its individual being in the Supreme. But while this conception of the role of the body in our destiny is suitable enough for a sadhana, spiritual discipline that sees earth only as a field of the ignorance and earth life as a preparation for a saving withdrawal. It is insufficient for a sadhana which conceives of a divine life upon earth and liberation of earth nature itself a part of a total purpose of the embodiment of the spirit here. If a total transformation of the being is our aim, a transformation of the body must be an dispensable part of it. Without that, no full divine life or earth is possible. Aurobindo 1952, C, page number 43. Supramentalized matter would respond to the conscious will and thus manifest the qualities of the spirit: immortality, malleability, lightness, beauty, luminosity, and bliss. There would also be significant physiological changes. Transformation implies that all this purely material arrangement will be placed by concentrations of force, each having a different mode of vibration. Instead of organs, there will be centers of conscious energy moved by the conscious will. No stomach, no heart any longer, no circulation, no lungs. All this disappears and gives place to a play of vibrations representing what these organs are symbolically. Supreme 1975, page number 312. The body would be made of concentrated energy which obeys the will rather than being a little soul carrying corpse. Supreme 1975, page number 313. The change of consciousness will be the chief factor. The initial movement, the physical modification will be a subordinate factor, a consequence. Aurobindo 1935, A, page number 1009. Aurobindo was no mere theoretician or writer of science fiction. He wrote on the basis of his experience, and his experiences with the transformation proceeded through three distinct phases. First, a bright phase from 1920 to 1926, in which many miraculous powers and phenomena manifested through the power of the supramental subconsciousness, which Aurobindo had first experienced in 1910. Secondly, a phase of seclusion in which Aurobindo and his chief disciple, the mother Mirra Richard, tested on his own bodies of the effects of many experiments, working at the level of the subconscient and inconscient from 1926 to 1940, and a third phase in which the field of his efforts encompassed the whole of humanity and the world from 1940 to the present. At the present of the first phase on November 24, 1926, he suddenly ended the manifestation of miracles and powers and announced his retirement into solitude. The ashram was officially founded under the guidance of the mother. He declared at this time, I have no intention of giving my sanction to a new edition of the old fiasco, a partial and transient spiritual opening within with no true and radical change in the law of the external nature. Supreme 1975, page number 322. From 1926 to 1940, he and the mother experimented with fasting, sleep, food, laws of nature, and habits, testing on their own bodies at the cellular level and subconscient. It was a race against time, not unlike what the Siddhas described in their use of Kayakalpa helps to prolong the life long enough for the more subtle spiritual forces to complete the divinization. Fundamentally, said the mother, the question is to know in this race towards the transformation which of the two will reach first. The first, who wants to transform the body in the image of the divine truth, or the old habit in the body of gradually decomposing. Supreme 1975, page number 330. The work proceeded at a level that Aurobindo called the cellular mind, an obscure mind of the body of the very cells, molecules, corpuscles. This body mind is a very tangible truth, owing to its obscurity and mechanical clinging to past moments and facile oblivion and rejection of the new. We find in it one of the chief obstacles to permission by the supermind force and the transformation of the functioning of the body. On the other hand, once effectively converted, it will be one of the most precious instruments of the stabilization of the supramental light and force in material nature. Aurobindo, 1969a, page number 346. To prepare the cell's mental silence, vital peace, cosmic consciousness were prerequisites to permit the physical and cellular consciousness to enlarge and universalize itself. But then it became apparent that the body is everywhere and that one could not transform anything without transforming everything. I have been digging deep and long mid a horror of filth and mire, a bed for the gold river's song, a home of the deathless fire. My gaping wounds are 1001. Aurobindo, 1952, page 6. Aurobindo and the mother found that complete transformation is not possible for the individual unless there is a minimum transformation by all.